Okay, so I'm going to show you how to make a toggle clasp. It's very easy, but this is what you're going to be doing for your first preparer's class. So usually this is done in this knotting or stringing is usually done with pearls. I actually don't usually do it when I'm doing my personal stuff. It does make a good little bracelet. They're fairly sturdy. So the way this works is the bar must be able to slide from side to side so that the jump ring here that's on the bar that cannot allow this to slide out. If that slides out when it's pushed to one side, then it's too long. The easiest, you can see how this lines up here and here, and then to take this off, it slides through. So when you do these, the easiest thing to do is to make this ring first, which is what I have here, and then make the bar. So I'm going to start off with this ring. I have it already preformed for this video, but you'll just make that out of 1.5 plus 2 millimeter wire. Should be fairly thick. And I'm just going to grab my cross-locking tweezers here and see if we can't set this. Just going to move my soldering area forward. I don't need these jump rings quite yet. First thing I'm going to do is solder this jump ring here. So you can see I've just got to always grab it at the bottom so it's not a heat sink. And I'm just going to solder this quickly. Dip it first. I'm going to solder this with hard solder. Make sure that you got flux over the entire joint. I'm using liquid flux. So a little bit of hard solder. You're going to clean this up either way. Heating it from underneath. Putting the solder on top. Remember, if you've got a lot of solder, the solder will sometimes float, or a lot of flux. Solder will sometimes float on the top. And this is hard, so it's not going to want to go much. And I'm going to leave that little lump there for now. And while that is cooling, I'm just going to grab a little bit of medium solder. And I'm going to solder a jump ring. To this bar here. Now, I want it to be basically in the middle. So again, this time I'm going to grab it right here. And you can set this up however you like. A little bit of flux. Make sure that I'm in camera here. So I got a little bit of flux in the area that I need it. Again, dip your piece. We want this basically in the middle. Now, right now, this bar is much longer than I need. I'm going to warm up my solder. So I balled it up on my pick. Just watching it to see if it flows just a smidge here. There it goes. Now I have another pre-prepped jump ring for this. I have a flat spot filed on this. This is the easiest way to make sure I have a good connection here. What I'm going to do is I have a piece of solder already attached to the bar. Now I'm going to take and find my joint. Add a little bit of flux to the joint. Now you can set this up however you like. I'm going to use my jump ring, like my soldering tweezers, and I'm going to just join that right there. There it goes, it's already joined. Now when I heat this up, I'm going to heat the bar up The bar has solder on it. The jump ring has solder on it. I'm just going to solder that right into the middle. Now, you should pickle it, obviously, before you continue, but for the purposes of this demo and timing, I'm just going to leave it. I'll let it cool off, and I'm going to work it dirty. Not a good idea, though, right? So before I solder the jump ring onto this, I'm going to put it on my mandrel. If I can. If I can't, I have other mandrels. So it shouldn't be too big. It should just fit the tip of your mandrel like this. And just making sure that it's basically round. They work better if they are round. So now I have this rounded. Again, I'm going to take my soldering pick. I'm going to solder. This time I'm going to put a little bit of, actually I have enough solder on there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to reflux it. And I'm going to grab my other jump ring here and grab it at the bottom. Flux the jump ring. Joint is down and it has already been sanded. I got a little flat spot on that jump ring. So I'm just going to heat this up, and I'm watching that solder there. And when it gets close to flowing, which it just about is, I don't want to bring in my jump ring too soon. I'm just going to heat it up again, get it to flow the rest of the way. There we go. So now I've got my bar with a jump ring on it and my roughly half inch circle with a jump ring. I'll let it cool down. I'll throw it in the pickle. And then what I'll do is I'll take this side, I'll move it all the way to one end so that the jump ring here touches the interior of this. And then I will mark it here. And that's pretty close. And I'll mark it here. And then just make sure that they're the same length. When I choose one side, just grab my dividers here, or my scriber. So I don't really want to touch anything here because it's probably still hot. That's okay. So I'm just going to push it all the way to one side, mark it, which happens to be at this line here. Once I have that, I can take a set of dividers because I want accuracy, right? And I can go from the middle of this to that mark, which is, and I'm going to actually mark a tiny little line right on here, which is in the middle of this jump ring. And once I have that, I'm going to line up the other side here with my exterior mark. And this is just so I know that both sides are the same length. And then I'll put this on that mark and mark it down here, just like that. And then cut the extra off. Always leave it a little bit long. If it's short, it won't work. And then we cut the extra off on this side. Give it a little sanding. Find my file here. So I'm just going to file the edge. Remember, whenever we cut or file, we'll have a sharp spot. Again, it should be pickled before you work on it. I'm not working on it anywhere near where the solder joint is, so I know there's no flux over here. The reason for pickling it is really because the flux can get in the way of your work. So you need to clean that off first. And then the same with this guy. This guy will go in the pickle and I'll clean him up. And then you can see how that when it slides all the way to one side, it doesn't fall out. And when I flip it around, same thing, it can't slide through. That means when it's held down here, and for now I'm just going to use this piece of wire. When this is attached to your chain, it'll slide through like that, and then it cannot fall out because the bracelet will be pulling it that way, or the necklace, right? So it's actually a pretty sturdy clasp, and it's very good for people with any sort of hand issues. So that's how you make your toggle for this project, okay?